So welcome to this week's Optimal Health Clinic Facebook Live. And this week, unfortunately, we do not have a guest appearance from my eldest daughter doing gymnastics. So hopefully the content of the video alone will be enough to make it interesting. But this week's video is a follow-on from last week. So last week I was talking about the importance of having a positive mindset and the potential of mindset to support us both on the recovery path, but also something that gets shaped on the recovery path, which can have significant value in our life on the other side of ME/CFS fibromyalgia. So this week, by request of people in the comments, I wanted to build a bit more on what you can do to cultivate a positive mindset. Like for those of us that don't naturally just find ourselves with a kind of mindset which is helpful and supportive, what can you do that actively helps cultivate, shape, and create that kind of mindset? So I've got a few thoughts on this. And I think the first thing I wanted to say is that for most people that do have a kind of a growth mindset or a positive mindset, it isn't something that they were born with. In fact, if you look at the stories of people who have gone on to do extraordinary things in their lives, almost by definition, the fact that they've done these extraordinary things, they have overcome great difficulty and adversity to do so. And it's that character building and development in the process which has then allowed them to go on and do those things which are kind of impactful or significant. And of course, that's what, for those of us watching people do that, that's what's inspiring. That's what kind of makes us believe it's possible to face fears and do things that are difficult. So when you recognize that a positive mindset is something that you create, it's something that you build, that is a different attitude to thinking, well, that person has it and I don't have it, and therefore I never will have it. So it's almost like, and of course it's different for different people, but it's almost like there's a recipe to creating a positive mindset. And when you have that recipe, it becomes something that you can deliberately and actively do. And if you have the wrong ingredients to that recipe, or you put those ingredients together in the wrong way, then you get a different outcome. It's like if you're baking a cake, and I'm not very good at baking cakes. If you're baking a cake and you're putting, you put coal in rather than chocolate for a chocolate cake, you don't get a very good chocolate cake. Or if you're baking a cake and you heat the ingredients before you cook the ingredients before you mix the ingredients, again, you're going to get a different outcome. So you need to have the right ingredients and you need to put them together in the right order, in the right way to create mindset. And having said that, of course, this recipe is different for different people at different times in different ways. But one of the things that I found extremely helpful in terms of shaping and cultivating mindset was actively seeking out stories of people which had overcome great adversity or gone on to do things that I found inspiring in their life, and learning the story of how they had done that. And we're talking back here in 1998 or something, and back then there wasn't wide adoption of the internet, certainly, and there wasn't really talk of people recovering from this group of illnesses. It wasn't like now you can go on something like Secrets to Recovery or other places on the internet, and you can find these kind of dozens of in-depth recovery stories where you can follow someone's journey of the adversity, the mindset, and the way that they've come through the other side and what life is like on the other side. It was part of the reason why we very actively, deliberately went and created that resource. So I was finding, reading books primarily by people that had been diagnosed with things like cancer or things like AIDS, or people that have been paralyzed, and following the stories of how they'd learned to live their life and how they'd found a way to either accept great difficulty and still shape life despite it, or to overcome great difficulty and change life on the other side. So it's actively seeking role models of people that have dealt with adversity, dealt with difficulty, and come through it, and being inspired by that. So inspiration is a big part of cultivating mindset. It's like if your mind is being fed by negativity from people around you. So if you're here, people say you're never going to recover, or you don't have what it takes to get over this, and you're surrounded by those voices, then that becomes your inspiration to stay where you are. If you stand guard at the door of your mind, and you actively go out there and you seek the voices and the ideas that you believe are going to be supportive, it's almost like they then become your community. Like in the years that I was most limited in terms of what I could do with ME/CFS, I was reading at one point, I ended up reading hundreds of books, and I was listening to audio programs, and I was spending my day with great thinkers by consuming their information in whatever way I could at that point. And that source of inspiration helped shape a different way of seeing the world, a different attitude, a different mindset. The next thing is that you recognize that mindset is something that you practice, and the more you practice, the better. You guessed it. So something happens, and you can either focus on the positive or the negative. Something happens and you can make it mean something, which is lowers your mood and lowers your sense of capacity, or you can make it mean something which is more uplifting and positive. And often in life, you don't actually know what something means, but the meaning you give it is the meaning that it ends up having. So for example, you can have a crash on the recovery path, and you can make that mean, I'm never going to recover, I can't do this is impossible, I always do it wrong, and that becomes your reality. Or you can make that crash mean that you learned something, you are getting better at pacing and bouncing the boundaries, that actually when you look back, you can see the things you would have done differently, and you actively will do them differently. Then that crash becomes a source of the next step forward. It becomes the information which allows you to approach it differently the next time. So you can choose what you make it mean, but the meaning that you give it will determine your mindset and the way that you feel. So you need inspiration, and you need to look at the meaning that you give to things. Like, do you make it positive or negative or whatever? You then need to practice. In fact, I used to talk a lot about what I call the 5 Ps. You need to practice. You need to be patient. You need to have precision. You need to be persistent. And you need to be something else. I can't remember. The patience, practice, perseverance, persistence, and precision. So you need to cultivate and actively use those different qualities. You also then, when you face things which are challenging and difficult, when you have a moment, like I talked a few videos ago, I did a video on facing fears, and I talked about the high ropes course that we did as a fundraiser. And there was this moment at the end where you had an option, you were equivalent of about 4 floors up, and literally just a step off the end, and then gradually this kind of rope slows down your descent. And it was this moment of fear. And it was that moment of, in those moments, do you take the step or do you take a step back? And in cultivating a positive mindset, you have to learn in those moments to do the thing which feels scary. And that doesn't mean that you should keep on putting yourself under stress and pressure and keep pushing yourself. That's often the attitude that's caused people to get sick in the first place. But when you have moments where you have a choice, and the better choice would be to do the thing that you're scared of, and it's like, it's uncomfortable and you have to take the step, the more that you are able to do that, the more you cultivate a more positive attitude and mindset in life. Years ago, one of the real decision moments for me in something like this was doing a firewall. And I wrote about it in my first book, where doing this seminar, there's this firewalk, and I thought I can't do it, and then I managed to do it. And the sense of personal power and the sense of capacity that came from doing that. So you need to have inspiration. You need to have the kind of the meaning that you place upon things. You need to have the sense of practice and patience and perseverance to shape the capacity. You need to face fears when things come up which are challenging and difficult, to build that muscle that tells you when you get to that uncomfortable territory, you have what it takes to do it. The final thing that I would add, and there's obviously lots more pieces we could talk about, but in this kind of short video, the final thing that I would add is often what can be getting in the way of our mindset is also trauma of things that have happened in the past that haven't been processed and resolved. So we have beliefs or we have emotions that when things come up, those beliefs or emotions arise and they get in the way of us being able to kind of see things afresh or see things as they really are in that moment. So using tools like emotional freedom technique, EFT, working with your emotions, giving space to those, allowing those, digesting those, processing those, is a helpful way of taking away. It's almost like the weeds that grow in the garden that get in the way of having a fresh and new mindset. And so understanding and kind of almost diagnosing those weeds and then kind of getting them out also gives you a more level playing field to work with. So just to kind of summarize, we need to realize that this is something that you cultivate, rarely something that you're born with. You need to have inspiration. You need to actively feed inspiration into your mindset. You need to look at the meaning that you place upon things and potentially look at changing that meaning. Developing the 5 Ps, you need to be practicing, you need to be patient, persistent, precise, perseverance. That will help you kind of train that emotional muscle. You need to face fears when you get to a moment where it feels scary and difficult, that when you do what's difficult, you develop the new capacity. And you also need to deal with the past and the traumas and the history, the things that get in the way of seeing things as they really are, as opposed to through the filters and the lenses of what's there from the past. So hopefully that's been useful. I am on holiday next week. I'm trying to remember if we have cover, or certainly one of my holidays, either next week or August. Someone in the other team is going to do the video. But share your thoughts and comments underneath, things that have helped you shape mindset, any reactions, responses, and I will be back in a couple of weeks' time. Bye-bye for now.